You're listening to The Real Short Box, a comic book podcast made for geeks by geeks.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to The Real Short Box. My name is Donald, and I am here with a couple of my compatriots, one Mr. Darren and
Hello.
Mr. Kevin. Say hello,
How you doing? Hello, everyone out there in podcast land.
Yeah, so thank you guys for being a part of this one. I'm super excited about this one. We are doing a ranking of Kurt Russell films. Now, Kurt Russell has been very prolific in his acting career, so while we would like to mention everything, we're just going to do a top 10. Now, it might not be your top 10, but it's a top 10 because of particular reasons that we have. Part of that is the conversations that'll come into involvement with these films. So we're going to start with number 10. Number 10 on our list being Stargate. So, gentlemen, let's talk about Stargate.
You know, Stargate is, you have to always, I think what's interesting, I was on a podcast over the weekend, you always have to take into consideration when these movies came out. And this movie came out at a time when special effects still weren't where they are today. It's a very cool looking movie. Has some cool action scenes, great set pieces. Obviously, it's slightly absurd in many ways, but also, too, it inspired a very long run of television shows on the Sci-Fi Network. So you got to give it its love just for that alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it ran. They even did like an Atlantis version, I think, which was a spinoff of the TV series. I thought there was more than one. I could be wrong. I think there was like Stargate and then Stargate SG-1 and then Stargate Atlantis, I think was the other one. So
all starring MacGyver.
Yeah. What was it? It's Harry. No.
Richard Dean Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew it was a three names.
Three names.
Yeah, Harry Anderson was from Night Court.
Yes, that is true. And while great, I could not see Harry Anderson being the star of a Stargate TV series for some reason.
And what was also kind of interesting about this movie, you have a fun little scientist nerd role from stereotypical creep, on-screen creep, James Spader.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Good old James Spader.
Very thin James Spader. Spader is...
Future Ultron.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He's got the voice, man. If ever his acting career went in the shitter, he could just voice act, and that would be, he could make enough money off that. I mean, that's what Mark Hamill did, for God's sakes, for the longest time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
His acting career kind of went down the tubes, and then he was like, okay, I'll just do voice acting. And he was perfect. That's how we got the Joker from Batman the Animated Series. So I can't complain.
Absolutely.
Let's move on, though, because we're going to try to make this a pretty quick one so everybody can kind of enjoy and on their car ride home from work or whatever. Number 9, we're going to go to New York, and that's where we're going to Escape from New York. That's a John Carpenter film.
Yes. If I recall, I think next year is going to be the 40th anniversary of this movie. Am I right, Brother Darren?
1981. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. That's crazy. Ernest Borgnine also starred in this film. A wonderful film that people that don't know about. They put New York, they created New York as a penal colony. So basically it was a prison, the whole city. And the president's plane was shot down in New York. And they needed to go in there because they did not want him to be killed. So they sent in another criminal, basically, Snake Plissken, of course, played by Kurt Russell. He made the role of Snake Plissken very famous. And in fact, they do have Escape from New York comic books, and I believe they're from Boom Comics. So that's a way we can always tie comic books into our podcast. Stargate, the same way. I believe they also had some Stargate comics at one point or another. So always fascinating to find that out.
Early John Carpenter, work, and also Donald Pleasence played the President of the United States.
That's true. Donald Pleasence did play the President. Thank you. I completely had forgotten about that. I always remember him just basically as Loomis from the Halloween series, and that's about it.
And let's not forget the bad Lee Van Cleef from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
And he was also in George Lucas's very first film, THX 1138.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't. I've never seen that movie. Is it worth watching?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I liked it. I thought it was pretty decent. And, you have to know I'm a huge Robert Duvall fan. I'll watch it.
Oh, yeah. Robert Duvall, he's in there too. Absolutely. Robert Duvall is great in just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact,
Duvall.
Donald, I'll lend you THX 1138. I have it in my DVD collection.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. We're going to move on, though, to number 8 in our list. Number 8 would be, fittingly, The Hateful Eight. The Quentin Tarantino film that came out about 5 years back, 2015. That stars Kurt Russell. He played the Hangman. Also had in the cast Samuel L. Jackson, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tim Roth, and if I recall, also Michael Madsen, Bruce Dern, Demian Bichir, and yes, I did, and Walton Goggins as well.
And the very first Oscar win by Ennio Morricone, the living legend.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Well deserved.
Fantastic score. Now, for those of you that are like a little bit intimidated by the runtime of this film, because the runtime is a bit extreme, I will say. Normally a film is an hour and a half, 2 hours. This one's 3 hours and 7 minutes. It's such a long film that Quentin even built an intermission into it, which I thought was brilliant because 3 hours and 7 minutes. Yeah, he wanted to keep it old school. Plus, he wanted to kind of give it a little bit of a break for people so they go out the lobby and, purchase things and stuff. So it was smart.
By the way, God rest his soul, Mr. Morricone. He passed away back in July.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
91 years old, but still great music. And Tarantino, of course, honored him throughout the years. Like Kill Bill has used some of that music. So.
Mm-hmm. And this film, by the way, is beautifully shot. I mean, beautifully shot. Every scene is just... I can't think of a more beautifully shot film that I've seen in a long time than this film. And I would probably pair this with Taxi Driver.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think as far as cinematography is concerned, this one is wonderful. It just, you feel like you're there. It's just a very special thing that they did.
For the audience to know, when I think of great cinematography, a heavyweight cinematography film would be Road to Perdition. Is it at that level?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And the cinematography was done by Robert Richardson.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
Now, I don't recall. Did he receive an Oscar nomination for his work?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. I know they shot it in, of course, because Tarantino loves film, so they shot it in 70 millimeter. And they used Ultra Panavision 70. So the aspect ratio was really rather unique, comparatively to a lot of other movies. So viewing that on the screen, it really popped. It really showed through. So it was something very special. And the story is fantastic. Just basically about a guy, Kurt Russell, playing John the Hangman Ruth. He captures Jennifer Jason Leigh, and he's taking her to, if I recall, the town of Red Rock in Wyoming. And they encounter another bounty hunter. It's played by Samuel L. Jackson, and a man who claims to be a sheriff. And they get stuck kind of in a blizzard, and they end up in this little cabin with a few other people. And it's kind of like then 10 Little Indians, except for, like people start to disappear and kill each other one by one. And it's really fantastic little kind of a fun who's going to survive type film. And I really enjoyed that. It's got a wide scope, but a very intimate story.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing right there.
Yeah, we're going to bounce on to number 7. Now, guys, this one, I know you're both excited about this. Executive Decision.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Starring what I thought was Steven Seagal, but ended up being basically a Kurt Russell film, which surprised the hell out of me when I went to
that trailer fooled me, when I saw it as a kid, as a teenager back in the day. And and when I saw it, as I was talking to you guys last night about this, those first 20 minutes are very interesting with Steven Seagal's character. And I was like, oh, I did not see that coming.
It's interesting. So like Executive Decision is a film I absolutely love. I watched it when it came out. I actually found the Blu-ray at a 7-Eleven, and I said, oh, there's no way I can't have this, right? So it's a film directed by Stuart Baird, who is a very well-known editor in the Hollywood world. And when you have an editor directing films, it has a very different kind of feel and look to it. And they use their ability to pace a movie to their advantage in their movies, much like this one. Now, what's funny is, so I know a couple sources over on that film that told me a story where at the time, Steven Seagal, but from all reports, was in the middle of an awful breakup with his wife at the time, Kelly LeBrock. Okay. So to say he was unpleasant on set is probably the nicest way to put it. And there was a situation where there was in the scene where he dies, he wasn't actually supposed to die there. It's just Steven was just irate and didn't want to be on the movie anymore. So he was actually supposed to come onto the plane and help them with the whole, how do you do? So one of the photo doubles for Kurt Russell was actually supposed to pull him through because Kurt had a promotional thing, going on. And he went up to him, from what I understood, that the photo double went up to Steven and said, hi, I'm going to be pulling you up here. And Steven looked at him and said, don't you ever talk to me again. And then he walked over to Stuart and was whining and complaining and this, that, and the other. And the photo double put his hand down to bring him up into the sleeve, or into the plane rather. And Steven just refused to take his hand. He just refused altogether and just closed the door. Like literally closed the door. That was completely unannounced, completely unrehearsed. And
Wow.
Out of the movie.
Interesting.
But this is a really great white knuckle thriller. It's interesting. There was a very controversial moment. Well, at least, the cable networks thought controversial. There is a sequence at the end of the movie where the head terrorist actually shot both of the pilots at the plane, and then he screamed, praise to you, Allah. And they always cut that out in the cable scene because it's been considered, to be rather too offensive for, regular cable viewing. And I just found that really intriguing because, most of the times when you cut, things, you cut F words, you cut really grotesque things, but they cut that for religious extremism. And I found that to be very intriguing.
So basically, he was screaming like Allah Akbar, and they found that offensive.
Yes. Now, all that being said, not to bog us down in the minutia, this is a great paced thriller. John Leguizamo's good. Oliver Platt is outstanding. If you're really an Oliver Platt fan, this is one you have to see.
Which I am a huge Oliver Platt fan. He's fantastic. And
he's good. He's definitely a wonderful character actor.
And the script is great. And you'll see Kurt in a role that's a little more of a passive role, not what you're used to. And Halle Berry, of course, looking good as ever.
And also Donald Trump's second wife, Marla Maples.
Yes,
wow.
as a stewardess.
As stewardess, that's right. And
leave it up to you, Kevin, to throw that in there.
And also BD Wan. Can't give some love to BD Wan. He's a good actor.
Very underrated. Works on every episode of Law and Order SVU.
There you go.
Okay, so let's go to number 6 on our list. This one's kind of somewhat similar in its frantic kind of a tone, but I really dug this one. We're talking about Breakdown. This was directed by Jonathan Mostow, and it starred Kurt Russell and Kathleen Quinlan, right? Yeah.
You got
it. And then J.T. Walsh also, may he rest in peace.
One of his last roles, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, and he played a son of a bitch in this. Basically, the quick plot of it is this. It's just Kurt Russell and Kathleen were on, they're a married couple, and they're on a cross-country drive. Their car breaks down. They're stranded in the New Mexico desert to catch a break because a passing truck driver offers to drive Amy to a nearby cafe. So Kurt stays behind, and his wife just never comes back. So he has to figure out what the hell happened to his wife, who kidnapped her, and why.
This is a very Hitchcockian movie. I remember I went to the $1.50 show with my mom, and we really didn't know what to expect, to be perfectly honest with you. And it far surpassed, because I'm like, it's Kurt Russell, Jack Burton, a lot of action and stuff. Not really. Like, it has a lot of tension, great music. It has one action scene at the end of the movie. It's a short action scene, but it's a fantastic action scene. Like, this is, if you're going to write and film a suspense thriller, I think you should definitely pattern it after Breakdown. It never gets over its skis. It's all relatively plausible. I love it.
Yeah, this one was shot and came out in the theaters in '97. It's a tight hour and 35 minutes long. So the pace just keeps going, and it doesn't let you down for a moment. There's not a moment's rest in this. It's continuous. It's just a really good thriller, a really good film, and some phenomenal acting from everybody in the cast, especially Kurt Russell.
Yes.
It was great.
Small cast, nevertheless, but like you said, it's a tightly woven story. Can't go wrong there.
No, absolutely not. Love Kurt Russell in this, and J.T. Walsh. He was fantastic. I think one of his other films that he did not too far in between there was Pleasantville, if I recall.
That was his last one.
Yeah, there we go. So that was right after.
And he had just come off doing The Negotiator, which is a very underrated 90s film as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Had a pretty funny scene in there, though, but yes, it is.
That was with Kevin Spacey and Sam Jackson. Correct?
Directed by F. Gary Gray.
Yep, that was the movie I think he made after Friday.
Yeah, F. Gary Gray. Yeah, he's been around a while, so it's funny when people get introduced to him for the first time. I'm just like, this guy's been around and he makes good stuff.
Here you go.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to number 5 on our list. Number 5 is an older film. Came out, I believe, in 1987. We're talking about the film where basically Kurt Russell and his love of his life, Goldie Hawn, got together. We're talking about Overboard.
Overboard.
Just one quick note, and Donald, I'll let you take us because I know you really enjoy this movie. Good evidence that can be provided that you made a great movie is when the remake is absolutely terrible.
Oh, is that the one with Anna Faris?
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried really hard. They reversed the roles, actually. So getting right to it, Kurt Russell's kind of a loser. He's he has a bunch of kids. He lives in a shack basically out in the woods, and he's a hilljack. He's a hillbilly, and he sees on television that there's this rich snobby lady played by Goldie Hawn, who she falls off of a boat, and her husband knows she falls off the boat, and he doesn't care. He doesn't try to find her because he hates her guts. And to be fair, she's a terrible woman. So she falls overboard and she gets found and brought into this hospital. And they're like, we need to know who this lady is. So they put her on the news and they're like, we need this lady, to identify this lady. Well, earlier in the film, Kurt was working on the boat or on the house. I can't remember which one it was. It was either the boat or the house. And Goldie was there at the time, and she was a complete piece of shit to him too. So he knew who she was. So to get back at her for being such a horrible person, because she even got him fired from the job, is to go and get her and say that they're man and wife, and to bring her back to his home and to make her watch his kids and cook and clean and do all this like grunt work that she would never do, and have like servants galore to do for her. So it's a great kind of a fish out of water comedy with having amnesia and stuff in there, and it's just so much fun. It has a great cast: Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Edward Herrmann, Katherine Hellman, Roddy McDowall. Directed by I recall Gary Marshall. So it was kind of destined to be a classic right from the start.
Oh yeah, there's some heavyweights right there.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and move on to number 4 on our list. Number 4 is a big one, guys. This one was so big that they had the experience at Universal Studios, and they just closed it out a few years ago. And Darren, you probably know better than I would. They closed it out a few years ago, and we're talking about Backdraft.
Yeah. Uh-oh. They closed Backdraft in favor of the Transformers ride, which I am a former employee of. Backdraft, it's funny. Like, so as a kid, I absolutely adored Big Trouble in Little China. That was my favorite movie. But Backdraft was the confirmation I needed that Kurt Russell was great. So aside from the movie Dark Blue, I don't feel like Kurt Russell has ever aimed to give, or at least try to get into the whole rigmarole of putting up an Oscar level performance. But what's funny is Kurt as an actor is very underrated, but Kurt is fantastic at being watchable. He just has such a great charisma and a presence to him. And it's so effervescent in Backdraft, where he plays, he and William Baldwin, who at the time was a relatively big actor, they play brothers who are working together at a Chicago fire station. And there's a great subplot that has to do with arsony, with also J.T. Walsh as the alderman. And what's his name? Robert De Niro is the investigator. Jennifer Jason Leigh as well, who you mentioned earlier. And
Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland is great. But the thing is, this movie, the special effects blew me away.
Very impressive.
I had a whole new interest in firefighting after watching this movie. I'm like, wow, these guys are heroic. They are in the worst possible situations. I mean, after listening to Ron Howard tell all the stories of how many times they had to stop filming in the middle of takes because the heat was too much for the actors to handle. I mean, this was a true labor of love. And once again, Kurt Russell's just a mountain of masculinity in this movie. And you just can't help but love the fact that he's kind of this broken man who's but he has a great talent as a firefighter. And that's great writing right there. And it's one of the very few movies that I have felt genuinely sad in at the end. Like when he loses his brother, that's heartbreaking to watch. And I mean, really, this is just great writing, great filmmaking. This is what Hollywood is all about.
And Hans Zimmer, this is one of his early music scores.
Which is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal score. And let's give some credit where credit is due for Ron Howard. I mean, the man, he went from, he did Backdraft in 91 and then to turn around and in 94 do a film like The Paper, which is a totally completely different type of film. There's not so much any real action in there. It's all the action is in the words that they speak and the tension that builds within that film. So Ron Howard, he could direct the hell out of a film.
And also a year later, one of my personal favorites in the 90s, Apollo 13.
Yeah, and then goes right to Apollo 13. The man's phenomenal. Honestly, I've never seen personally Apollo 13.
Oh, it's good, man.
It's one of my shames. It's one of my movie shames.
You got to check it out. Got to check it out.
Yeah, I think it's what was tough about Apollo 13 is there was that Tom Hanks fatigue that was wearing in a little between Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, which Forrest Gump in Philadelphia, he gives better performances. But Apollo 13, he's still really good in it. And, for me, Kevin, the year after Apollo 13, he made a great film called Ransom with Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's funny because I feel bad because Ron Howard hasn't made a film that I personally like in a really long time, but it's easy to forget how many great movies this guy was literally putting off the assembly line. Like Ron Howard's a true legend, and I just always hope he just puts something out. Now, the new Hillbilly Elegy came out, which I love that book, so I'm kind of interested to see how the film looks on Netflix.
Don't read the reviews. Just go in and watch it.
All right, sounds fair.
You think. We're going to move on to number 3 on the list, and that is another John Carpenter film. It is The Thing. Came out in 1982. It was running time wise is about an hour and 49. It is a sci-fi horror kind of a thriller movie.
Yep,
in
remake.
Which, it's a remake based on a movie I think, if I recall, from the 50s.
The Thing from Another World by Howard.
Yeah, 1951. That's correct.
And in Antarctica, it's a remote research group of scientists. Their base camp gets disturbed by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog, and they take in the dog. And it because the helicopter, I think, crashes or goes away. I think it crashed, if I recall. The dog then starts to morph a little bit, and we get some of the best, most grotesque special effects ever seen in film on the silver screen. Like this movie, how it got made and how it's phenomenal. I did not see this, by the way, until I was older I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s when I saw it for the first time, and I was blown away. I was like, why didn't anybody make me see this film?
Well, I think I tried to, but you were always into like you're like horror movies, Kevin. I don't like graphic horror movies. You're like, I'm like, all right.
Well, it's kind of interesting, what really kind of turned me on to the movie was the Xbox game from 2002, 2003, where it actually takes place after the movie. The game does, and I went back to look at this movie, and I'm like, I'm a huge John Carpenter guy, but obviously, like John Carpenter, some of his films are a little before my time. And this is just one that I missed. And like I said, I agree with you. I've always been a huge fan of the visual aspect of the movie. And, to be fair, the remake is not better by any stretch, but I actually kind of dig the remake too. Like which makes me think that this has solid story ground, because now you've remade it twice and both remakes are completely watchable, which this is a classic story. And Kurt Russell is MacReady, and as I like to say, the blue-collar SAG members of Hollywood, because all of those co-stars are all blue-collar character actors, and they're all awesome.
Yeah, Richard Mauser, Wilford Brimley, Keith David. Keith David ends up being a pretty regular John Carpenter staple as well.
Of course.
Also be in another big one, They Live, with
and Ernest Borgnine.
And what?
Ernest Borgnine.
Oh yeah, Ernest Borgnine was in Escape from New York, and then one or two others, if I recall.
Yeah,
but we'll go on. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is another John Carpenter film, and Darren and I we share a love for this film. It's Big Trouble in Little China.
Man, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, I feel like, what haven't we said about this on one of our podcasts at one time or another? It was kind of fun. Like the other podcast that I was on this weekend with our mutual friend Howard, he had to pick a movie to pair with Big Trouble in Little China, and I thought it was the most unenviable position ever, because what movie is like Big Trouble in Little China?
That's true.
It's unique. It's fun. Super entertaining. It's low key, is beautiful to look at. I love the sets. I love this is just great work in Jack Burton, baby. Come on.
Yeah, I think probably Kurt Russell's most memorable character and his most hammy character is Big Trouble in Little China's Jack Burton. He also has some great co-stars. I mean, within James Hong playing the villain, David Lopan, Kim Cattrall playing Gracie Law. She was phenomenal in this, coming off hot from her Mannequin starring role, and Dennis Dunn playing Wang Chi, the gentleman in love, so to speak. This was a love story, ultimately. It was a love story, action, fantasy comedy, which is the weirdest thing to say, but it all works in the most impossible, pleasurable way imagined.
Yeah, and Kurt Russell, what's so interesting is he is a supporting character in this story, but just steals the freaking show, and you think he's the main character. It's pretty amazing.
He plays, of course, like we said, Jack Burton. He gets caught up in a bizarre conflict within underneath the San Francisco's Chinatown, within a bunch of rival gangs. That also involves an ancient Chinese prince and a Chinatown crime lord, then kidnapped a beautiful green-eyed woman, which was Dennis's girl at the time, the love of his life in this movie. And then Jack then joins in with him to help. To his credit, he didn't have to. He could have left. He joins in with him because, one of his close friends, girl, got kidnapped. And he's like, I'm not having this. I'm going to help you. And they get in his big truck, his semi, and they follow them into Chinatown and into a lot of trouble, a lot of big trouble. Speaking also on this, one must not forget that there is a comic book, Big Trouble in Little China, as well, from Boom Comics, I believe. So, and it's actually pretty good. It picks up where the movie left off, and even at this point, Jack has domesticated that creature that was riding in the back of the semi at the end of the film.
Oh, that's great.
Kind of a funny moment, yeah.
I just found out, too, there's an alternate ending, or basically an additional scene, which I have to pull up on YouTube. I hear it's quite classic.
Yeah, I think they had that alternate ending in one of these special edition DVD collections that I loaned to somebody and never got back. So
Yeah.
I don't know where it went, but it was a cool collection. So if anybody has that, let me know.
Was it you, Kevin?
Send a copy.
Yeah, send me my copy back. Let's go to number one. Number one is one of the best Western films known to man. We are talking about a town in Arizona, Tombstone.
Oh man, God, I don't want to take up too much time on this one, but just a couple of quick notes. Cast, amazing. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. Val Kilmer's as Billy or Doc Holliday.
Doc Holliday. Mm-hmm.
You've got Michael Biehn as Johnny Ringo. You've got Powers Booth as Curly Bill.
Oh man, Powers Booth chewed that scenery up.
Oh yeah, you got your two brothers played by Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton. Now, what I do want to bring up, because I don't think he gets enough credit for it, the director of the film, his name's George P. Cosmatos. This guy had 4 of the most interesting films to go back to back on: Rambo: First Blood Part 2, Cobra, Leviathan, and then Tombstone.
Wow, George. Leviathan, that starred RoboCop guy, right?
Yes.
Peter Weller.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never seen that one. Any good?
It's kind of gross. Like if you're into The Thing, it's very similar to The Thing, but it's The Thing on a submarine.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, if I'd be remiss, this cast is no joke. You have other people that we didn't mention: Billy Zane, Terry O'Quinn, Billy Bob Thornton, Michael Rooker.
Wow, man. I didn't realize that.
I mean, this film, quite frankly, this could have Kurt Russell's most famous line in any movie. Tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me.
Yeah, his mustache is very popular. In fact, Kurt Russell can grow a mustache. He can grow it. He grew one for the Hateful Eight, the mustache and beard, or the mustache. It's all his. And then Kevin, you were talking about Bone Tomahawk, which is another one of his films, a very violent but very good Western film.
Absolutely.
He was phenomenal in that. And then he kept the beard and the mustache thing going and rolled right on into the Christmas Chronicles by Netflix and into the sequel, Christmas Chronicles 2, which just recently came out on Netflix. If those of you have not checked that out, you may want to, because the first one that I have seen was very fun. And this being around, holiday times and stuff, even though it's after Christmas, you might still be sentimental for Christmas and might want to give it a watch.
Yeah. Now, something I'd also like to mention about Tombstone. So I'm a big fan of Westerns personally. And one of the problems Westerns have clearly had is that they haven't brought in new audiences over the years. Mm-hmm. And Tombstone might be the best pop culture Western of the modern day. I mean, it's
I think so.
Yeah, it's completely accessible to all audiences, very watchable. It moves very well, and it has those great movie star moments that you don't quite get. And it also too is more action oriented. But yeah, you can't get enough of Tombstone in many respects. And it's always a gem that I think gets left out, that people will forget about. And once again, you've got top line Kurt Russell, completely watchable, very strong male character, and his Wyatt Earp. I'm sorry, it's just better than Kevin Costner's, and I adore Kevin Costner as an actor, but it's not quite where Kurt Russell's was, and that movie star quality of Kurt Russell's just shines through the entire film.
Now, I just recently, as of last year, I think I spent a night in Tombstone, Arizona. And it was the most fascinating thing. Tombstone, Arizona is an extremely small town. I mean, you could walk through it in 10 minutes. It's very small. It is a very Western town. It does look like the Old West. It's preserved that way on purpose. Everything within there is functional, however. Ranches and cattle and horses. And then they have their bars, or AKA saloons and restaurants and the hotels and everything. We stayed in a hotel that was a little bit off the beaten path. And it was funny because when we got in there, they were gone for the evening, and it was like 7:00, and they were like, "We're out to dinner. Your door's unlocked and the key's on the bed to the hotel room there, and just go on in and enjoy." And you're like, what? It was the weirdest, most randomest thing. And then in the morning, breakfast was served out back in like an outdoor area, and they had coffee sitting there and stuff. It was very, very Westerny in feel, and it kind of eased you into the vibe of the town when we went in the next morning to see it. I had a very fun conversation with a guy that was in Tombstone, and he was an extra in there. He was one of the stunt riders on one of the horses, and he was very happy to tell us that story. So it was a fun little conversation we had with him, and a fun little town. And I highly recommend those that haven't seen the film to do so on Amazon Prime. It's available now that you can watch it there. And if you haven't gone to the town and you're in Arizona, I highly recommend that you go there. It's a lot of fun.
I don't know one person I've ever met that does not like Tombstone.
Right, exactly.
It's one of those.
And that's where we're going to lead off with that. So, definitely watch Tombstone, enjoy. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to us. We're going to call it an evening here. Thank you for tuning in to us here at The Real Short Box. Again, my name is Donald.
I'm Darren.
And my name is Kevin.
And if we don't see you out and about anytime soon, perhaps we will see you someplace special. We will see you
at the sweet, precious, lovely, safe, and gorgeous comic book shop.
This has been The Real Short Box. We'll see you at the comic shop. Thanks for listening.